properly tracking API call status in our Redux store. Let's put this new information to use. I'm in coursespage.js down here in the map state to props function. What we want to do is return a Boolean that tracks whether an API call is in progress. So we need to pass another prop up here. Right now, when you click save on a course, it provides no feedback at all. It would be nice to at least acknowledge the click and disable the button with a friendly message so that you know that the save is in progress. This is easy to pull off with a little local state, so let's do that. Before I do, I want to clarify that one of the common questions in Redux is when to use local state. In this case, local state is useful because this is fleeting data that the rest of the application won't care about. We could run this interaction through the Redux flow, but in my opinion, it would just be unnecessary overhead since so few components care about this data. First, let's add some additional state via the useState hook. We'll store this in a Boolean called saving and call the setter setSaving. We'll initialize the state to false. Now let's scroll down to the handle save function. And when the save starts, we need to set saving to true. We don't need to set it back to false again after the API call completes since we're going to redirect to another page. Now we can pass this as an additional prop on the course form. Now the data that we need is getting passed down to the course form. So let's open it up. When we originally created this, I already had it wired up to accept a Boolean for saving, which determines whether the submit button is disabled and what the label says. So we don't need to make any changes here. We're actually all set. So let's check this out in the browser. We'll click on a course and hit save. The input disables and shows a different message, and then redirect. So now we have a nice feedback experience, so we know that that call is in progress. Our form is starting to feel polished, but it would be nice if we notified the user when the action is complete. So next, let's add a toast. We need a friendly way to tell the user when actions are successfully completed. For that, let's use an open source React component called React-Toastify. This is already installed since it was listed in our package.json in the beginning of the course. To configure React-Toastify for use throughout the site, let's import the toast container and the CSS that comes comes along with it. Now we can place the toast container anywhere within render. I'll set it down here below the switch. To configure React Toastify, we can add a few props. I'm going to set auto close to 3000, which means that it will automatically hide the toast after 3 seconds. And I'm going to configure it to hide the progress bar because it comes with a built-in progress bar, but we don't really need that. And that's all it takes to globally configure React Toastify. Now that we've configured it, let's jump over to manage course page.js and we'll put it to use. At the top, let's import toast from React Toastify. So this is the method that we will call to display the toast. Then we want to display the toast after the save is completed. So before we call history.push, we will say toast.success, and then we can decide what message to display. We'll say course saved. That should do the trick. Let's try it out. Click on a course, hit save. There we go. Toast displays. Slick. It animates in, and then it hides itself automatically after 3 seconds, just like we configured in app.js. Our app is looking quite polished now, but there's a significant concern left. What about error handling and validation? Let's address those next. Our form is looking good, but what happens when the API throws an error? Let's find out. Click on Add Course, and then click on Save on an empty course. Notice that we receive an error back from the API. We get a 400 bad request back, that the title is required. The form is broken now, though, because our submit button remains disabled, and the user can't see the error unless they happen to be a developer who likes checking the console. Yuck. So let's open api-server.js and see how this works. If I scroll down here, our API has server-side validation that requires some basic information. It calls this validate course function. If we go to the bottom of the file, we can see that to validate a course, it checks to make sure that title, author ID, and category are populated. If we jump over to api-utils.js, we can see that the error handler is already parsing error responses from the API. The handle error function then takes over, which logs the error in the console, and then throws the error so that functions higher up the stack can handle it as desired. In a real app, you'd likely want to log the error to some error logging service as well. To handle this response, we need to catch the error in manage course page. We're calling save course, which returns a promise, but notice we don't have any error handling here because we haven't added a catch yet. So let's add a .catch. The catch will receive an error as an argument, and the first thing we should do is set saving to false, because we're going to stay on this page if an error occurs. So we want to make sure that we re-enable the save button so somebody can try again. Then we can call set errors, which was declared up above in our use state call, and we can set the onSave error to error.message. I'll hit save and it reformats. Now notice that I'm setting an onSave property on our errors object here on line 58, and I'm setting it to the error message. To understand why I'm setting onSave, it's helpful to go look at the course form. At the top of our course form, we have a section that looks for errors.onSave and then displays those errors within a nicely styled div. And again, we didn't have to write this code. We just pulled this out of the course exercise files to save some time. but thankfully this is already wired up to handle displaying our errors. So we don't need to change any other code in order to display our validation message now. Let's go to the browser and try it out. Let's hit save on this empty form and see what happens. We're at the top of our, and it never goes away. Why? Well, because Redux thinks that there's still an API call in progress. We can see this if I click over on the Redux Dev Tools, and I click on the State tab here, we can see that there's still one API call in progress. The real problem is when an API call fails, our Redux store isn't notified that one less API call is in progress. So we need to enhance our Redux configuration so that it decrements the number of API calls in progress if an API call fails. Let's do that next. If we open course actions and look at the save course thunk, we can see that we're currently simply throwing the error. Redux isn't being notified that the API call is completed since we only do so for the success case. Remember, any action type that ends in success decrements the count of API calls in progress. So we need to also decrement the count of API calls in progress when the API call fails. That's why the spinner is continuing to display. The fix for this is simple. We need to dispatch an action when an API call errors. So let's open up actiontypes.js and add another action type for API call error. Then let's add a corresponding action creator in API status actions.js. Simple enough. Now we can jump over to the API status reducer. Let's update this to handle the API call error the same way that it handles a success. So right here we'll say if the action.type is equal to types.API call error, or the action type ends in success, decrement the state by 1. So now both errored API calls and successful API calls will decrement the number of API calls in progress. Now that we've updated our actions and reducers to handle API call errors, let's update our save course thunk to dispatch this action when an error occurs. So open course actions. And then at the top, we need to import API call error from our API status actions, and then let's jump back down. Within our catch, what we need to do is dispatch API call error and pass it the error that we received. This should do the trick. Now, if an error occurs, our API status will still get updated to reflect the completed call. Let's give this a shot. I'll click on Add Course, come over, hit Save. We saw our server-side validation. If I click over here on State, the number of AJAX calls in progress is now 0, just like it should be. So if I click over here on Courses, I no longer see that spinner there either. Now that we found a pattern that works, let's jump back in the code and enhance our other thunks as well. I'm going to copy this line, and then go up here to our catch for our other thunk, and do the same dispatch here. Then let's jump over to authoractions.js and make make the same change. Come to the top, import API call error, and then down here on our catch, dispatch, API call error, and pass the error. Now our app properly handles API call errors, but it would be nice to avoid getting such errors at all. So in the next clip, let's add client-side validation. We're not doing any client-side validation yet, so if you click on Add Course and hit Save, you have to wait for the server to respond to know whether you have any validation errors. Let's add client-side validation so that users get validation feedback immediately instead of having to wait for the server to respond. Open up Manage Course page and let's add a new function above handle save called form is valid. This is a pattern that I enjoy for handling errors. First, I'm destructuring here at the top just to shorten my calls below. I declare an empty errors object, and if I find an error, then I set a property on the errors object that corresponds to the field's property in state. I call set errors and pass it the errors object. Remember, errors is already initialized as an empty object since we declared it in a previous module. Finally, I return a boolean to determine if the form is valid. The form is valid if the errors object has no properties. I use object.keys to do this. It returns an array of an object's properties, so if there are no properties on the object, then I know that no errors were found. Now that we've declared our validation function, let's call it down here in handle save. We'll call it at the top, and we'll say if the form is not valid, then there's nothing more to do here. We will return. And the errors will display because up on line 56, we called set errors to update state. So if the form isn't valid, we can just return early. If we scroll down, we can see that we're already passing an errors object over to the course form. And if we open the course form, you can see that each of the inputs accept an error prop, and note that the errors property that it's looking for corresponds with the name of the input. So errors.title is for the input of title. So we're setting the relevant error for each input. Let's try this in the browser. Now when I hit save, there we go. Instant feedback. We didn't have to wait for our slow API. And if I fill out the form, we should still be able to submit it as expected. Great, it worked, and there's our new course. To close out this module on asynchrony and errors, I want to show you a handy way to make your app feel faster. We're going to use a pattern called optimistic updates in order to handle deleting our course. There's one obvious feature missing from our application. We're loading, saving, and updating courses, but what about deletes? Let's add support for deletes, but handle deletes optimistically. Let me explain. Currently, when the user saves or updates an existing course, they have to wait for the API call to complete before they're redirected back to the course list page, where they can continue working. This assures that we don't show them the updated record until we know that the save completed successfully. However, we can handle deletes a bit differently. Instead of waiting for the API call to complete, we can do an optimistic delete. The word optimism is all about assuming the best, and that's just what we're going to do. Instead of waiting for the API call to complete, let's remove the course from the UI immediately. This is a popular technique for making user interfaces feel extremely responsive. To set this up, let's begin by creating a new action type constant. I'm going to add it down here with a nice long comment that explains what's going on. We're going to call this delete course optimistic since we're being optimistic here. We shouldn't call it success because we're going to be optimistic and update the store immediately without waiting for the delete API call to complete. This name choice is also important because remember, in our API call status reducer, it's currently looking for any action types that end in success and reducing the number of API calls in progress. If we had kept the old name, then our API status would be incorrect because we'd remove one call from the count even though we never added a call to the count when the AJAX call was initiated. So I'm including this comment above this action type to help clarify my intent. Now let's open up the course actions file and create a new thunk for handling deletes. I'll add it down here at the bottom. Note how this differs from our other thunks. I'm immediately dispatching the delete course optimistic action so that our UI is immediately updated to reflect this deletion. Also, note that I'm not dispatching begin API call or handling any API call errors. Why? Well, since we're going to immediately respond to the user's click without waiting for the API call to complete, there's no need to display the preloader. Next, let's create the action creator at the top for delete course optimistic. Now that we have our action creator, there's one final piece. We need to update course reducer. Down here, let's enhance course reducer to handle this new action type. We'll have a case of types.delete course optimistic. For this, what we want to do is return the array of courses but omit the one course that was just deleted. To do that, let's use JavaScript's filter function, which accepts a predicate A predicate is a function that returns true or false. So what we will do is compare to course ID, and we want to make sure that the course ID is not the action.course.id. At the beginning of this line, I did forget to put in my return statement. I'll hit save. So this will return an array of all the courses, but with one course omitted, the course that has the course ID that we're trying to delete. JavaScript's built-in filter function is handy because it returns a new array. So we don't have to worry about mutating state here. We're returning a new array with one course omitted from the list. With the Redux portion now set up, let's jump over to coursespage.js. It makes sense to have the delete button on our list of courses. So first, let's go down to map dispatch to props. We're going to need a new action, and that action is going to be delete course. Then let's go up into our component. And implement a handle delete course method up above render. We want to output a success message message to say that the course was deleted. And notice that I'm outputting the success message before I even fire off the action to delete the course, because we aren't going to wait for that action to succeed. We're going to immediately tell the user that the course has been deleted. And this action will fire immediately as well. It won't wait for that API call to complete. We do need to jump to the top of the file and import toast from React Toastify. And down here, within render, let's go down to course list. And we need to pass this new prop over to course list. It will now receive on delete click as a new prop. And we'll pass it this dot handle delete course. Finally, we need to update the course list component to handle a delete course link. So open up course list. At the bottom, let's add that new prop type. Then let's jump to the top of the file and destructure this new prop. There's on delete click. Let's add an extra column where we will place our button. Don't need a header for this one. Finally, let's scroll down and implement our button. So we'll do that as the final column right here. I'll just paste it in. So we have a button with some Bootstrap classes on it. To make it look nice, I have the onClick handler that will pass in the course, and then a label of delete. We should be all set. Let's hit save and see if this works in the browser. Our delete button is rendering. When I click it, hey, look at that. It immediately deletes the course. Or at least it immediately removes it from the list, and we see our toast pop in right away, even though behind the scenes, these network calls are still in progress. If I come in here and go to network, I can click delete a couple times, and I can see still pending, still pending. It takes it a little bit of time to actually handle that delete, but we get instant responsiveness up. Call to delete course fail. Let's finish this module. Now you might be thinking, if this call to delete course fails, we're not this time. Instead set auto close equal to false. And down here on 21, delete, the app feel more responsive by using an optimistic delete strategy. And before we finish up, be sure to open up the course API file and undo our breaking change. Throughout the course, we've used promises to handle async calls. Async await, we handle errors. Async await is behind the scenes.